A security researcher is being sued and is facing a restraining order after exposing the true impact of a ransomware attack on the city of Columbus, Ohio, unveiling that 6.5 terabytes of sensitive personal data were accessible on the dark web, which defied the mayor's claims that the data was encrypted and unusable to criminals. What are some of the legal and ethical implications that arise when a researcher discloses information that was originally obtained illegally, even if it is for the good of the people? You're listening to the Daily Decrypt. Thanks so much for continuing to listen to the Daily Decrypt. Before we get into the main stories of the day, I just wanted to address the elephant in the room that the episodes have been coming out less and less frequently, which you may have noticed if you're an avid Daily Decrypt listener. And that's for two main reasons. First of all, life's been a little crazy at work and studying for the master's program at the Sands Institute and just keeping up with life has really gotten in the way. But also, I've been feeling a little less motivated because, one, I'm not learning as much as I'd like to by doing this podcast, and that's what truly motivates me. So because of that, I'm going to try to switch the format a little bit. I'm going to pick a story maybe every day, maybe every other day, and really dive deep into it and give you all the juicy details. And then at the end or the beginning of each episode, I'll do a lightning round with essentially the headlines from news you need to know. So that way you and I are both learning together about a single story while also receiving the news on a daily basis. So the city of Columbus is suing a security researcher named David Leroy Ross after he exposed the true severity of a recent ransomware attack. On July 18th, the city of Columbus fell victim to a ransomware group named Reseda that stole 6.5 terabytes of sensitive data. And during and after the investigation that took place resulting from this ransomware attack, the mayor of Columbus, Andrew Ginther, stated that forensic experts involved in the investigation determined that the data published by Reseda on the dark web was likely encrypted or corrupted, which was a conclusion that he drew based on the failed attempts by Reseda to auction off the data on July 31st and August 8th. So simply going by the fact that they were unable to auction off the data, they're assuming that the data was either corrupted or encrypted. And I'm not sure about the mayor or the city of Columbus's motivation for saying this, but it doesn't sound like they actually have the evidence that they need to make that claim. And because of that, it seems sort of like they're trying to get off scot-free for leaving their back doors wide open, right? Oh, they got 6.5 terabytes of data, but it's unusable, so no one needs to worry, right? So as a security researcher, I'd imagine that would piss me off because this is a very well-known ransomware group, and 6.5 terabytes of data, surely something in there is usable. Otherwise, why would they even go through the trouble of downloading it or selling it on the dark web? Even if the sale was unsuccessful, that could be for a myriad of different reasons other than the data being corrupted. So I, too, would be inclined to go and investigate this for myself, right? Do a little Robin Hooding. And so that's what this security researcher did. They went and turned to the dark web, found the data that was compromised by the city of Columbus, downloaded it, and looked through it to see if the mayor's claims were true, if it was really encrypted, and to see if this data could be used by criminals or if it was usable at all, right? Well, after spending a little time with the data, the security researcher, David, realized that there was, in fact, a lot of highly sensitive information in this large data set, to include the names of domestic violence cases and social security numbers of police officers and crime victims, which already is enough to debunk the mayor's claims that this data is unusable. But the mayor fired back, and the city of Columbus fired back, saying that it would take a high level of expertise to be able to extrapolate this data from the larger encrypted data set, and that what David was doing was actually criminal, accessing data that was initially obtained illegally and disseminating it. Because I forgot to mention that this security researcher, David, sent this information directly to news media in an attempt to debunk the claims made by the mayor. And so the problem lies in the fact that David took this information and went straight to the media to debunk the mayor's claims, instead of going to the city and trying to work with them and convince them that what they said was wrong so that they could redact their statement. And because he went about it this way, instead of following all the policies and procedures that go along with responsible disclosure, the city of Columbus has obtained a temporary restraining order against Ross, accusing him of criminal acts, invasion of privacy, and negligence. The lawsuit that they took out against him claims that by downloading and sharing the stolen data, Ross interacted with the criminal element on the dark web. And even though it's pretty clear that this person's intent was for good, this is a gray line that security researchers have to walk very closely, which is tough to do because in cybersecurity, there's a lot of urgency and there's a lot of passion, right? There's a lot of innocent people being taken advantage of, and that can get you heated, which can result in some rash decisions like taking sensitive data to the media. Now, all that to say is I don't fault this person. I probably would have done the same thing, if not worse. But this whole situation goes to show how much nuance and skill and discretion is involved in being a security researcher. But responsible disclosure aside, this security researcher went out of their way to try to prove that they had an actual problem on their hands, right? So the city of Columbus is getting essentially free security labor that they can then use to help allocate resources to notify victims or harden their systems even further. And that's something you want to encourage as a leader. That when you say something that is false and someone proves you wrong, you can't let your pride get in the way. You have to step off your high horse and publicly correct the statements that you made that were incorrect. And maybe even give commendation to the person who pointed that out. That's the sign of a true good leader. And, also by suing this person and taking out a restraining order against this person, you're discouraging security researchers from doing this type of thing, which will only help the broader public. It's also pretty embarrassing because they could have been spending those government resources on addressing this problem, fixing their communications, but instead they put these efforts towards prosecuting someone who's only trying to help them. So it's really not a good look for the city of Columbus in Ohio. First of all, losing 6.5 terabytes of personal sensitive data to include security numbers of law enforcement officers and victims of certain crimes. But then they prosecuted someone who was trying to help them get their facts straight. So I don't want to make any sweeping generalizations just looking at these specific facts, but these are the types of things that sway the hearts and minds of voters, specifically me. If I happened to be a resident of Columbus, I would definitely not be voting for this administration in the future. And despite Columbus's poor handling of this situation, the fact remains that this data is still publicly accessible on the dark web. At this moment, anyone listening to this podcast can go and download that data and verify for yourself. Now, Columbus got lucky that it was a security researcher who went to go try to prove this, because this is public knowledge. There's now lawsuits out there, and we know that the Columbus isn't getting any better. So who knows if these vulnerabilities have even been patched that led to this ransomware attack. But the data is out there for anyone to see, except for this security researcher who has a restraining order against the data that's out there, I believe. It's such a weird restraining order against accessing this public data. So what good does that solve? I mean, you eliminated one person from accessing this out of the billions of people on the planet, most of which will probably have more malicious intent. And another interesting thought I just had is that the fact that they're suing the security researcher over the data disclosed proves that the security researcher was right. I don't know if they're trying to prove that the security researcher was wrong, or if they're mad that they got called out or lied to their constituents. But taking legal action against someone essentially proves that what they're saying is true, right? He's just saying that the data was sensitive, which disproves what the government of Columbus was saying, and the data must be sensitive enough, so much that it is cause for legal grounds. So yeah, lots of thoughts. I feel like I could ramble on this all day, but from what I can see, neither party is particularly in the right as to the way they went about these things. But it's really embarrassing for the city of Columbus to handle this in such an immature way. All right, so that's enough of that. Let's get into a quick lightning round of the news. 3 UK men have confessed to running a one-time password agency, which is an infamous service designed to intercept one-time passcodes for online fraud. The service, which shut down hurriedly after a media expose, exploited automated phone calls to trick victims into revealing their one-time passwords, eventually targeting over 12,500 individuals. Despite their attempts to cover their tracks, the culprits couldn't fully sever ties with their customers, which led to their eventual arrest. With similar services still thriving, it's a timely reminder to be skeptical of unsolicited calls purportedly from banks and to verify that your account activities are uncompromised. Up next, a former engineer in Missouri has been arrested after a botched attempt to extort $750,000 in Bitcoin from his previous employer by locking out administrators and threatening to shut down servers. Using tools like Windows, NetUser, and PS Password, he manipulated passwords and accessed systems through a hidden virtual machine. Authorities tracked his actions back to the company-issued laptop, and he now faces up to 35 years in prison, as well as significant fines. And finally, there are new vulnerabilities found in Microsoft's macOS applications, including Outlook and Teams, that enable hackers to bypass macOS's security model and access sensitive data without user consent. Exploiting these 8 flaws can allow attackers to hijack app privileges to secretly send emails, record audio, or capture videos. Although these risks are considered, quote, low risk by Microsoft, the company has started addressing these issues, emphasizing the need for a better plug-in security approach in macOS.
This has been the Daily Decrypt. If you found your key to unlocking the digital domain, show your support with a rating on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. It truly helps us stand at the frontier of cyber news. Don't forget to connect on Instagram or catch our episodes on YouTube. Until next time, keep your data safe and your curiosity alive.